All right, Geoff Fienberg is here. We are back for another episode of The Drive. Geoff, first full tournament of the year. We've got 144 players. We are still in Hawaii. How are you feeling about the first full cut event, 4-day, 144 guys? Fantasy golf, we've got 6 of 6s back in the mix, a big betting board of guys up to 300 and 500 to 1, an event that we seem to know very well. It's been on the PGA Tour since 1965. How are we feeling this week, my friend?
Feeling pretty good, a lot better than people who got burnt. Would you rather have been burned by Morikawa or just totally swung and miss and spent the majority of 4 days thinking, how did I miss a 20-1 Morikawa in a 39-man field? Be better, Fienberg.
I was aloof as well. I spent all of my money on Justin Thomas, who made it pretty clear that he was going to be irrelevant very early on in that tournament.
Yeah. And I guess obviously the big names were there, and I guess a big start to the year. We're worried our favorite's going to roar again, Andy. Got one out of the gate, no matter how it happened. Chalk still hidden on PGA Tour golf.
Yeah, so that's a good place to lead us off for the Sony Open, Geoff. And I wanted to ask you, because we are coming off a 7-1 winner with Jon Rahm. We don't have quite the star power at the top of the field this week in Waialae, but Tom Kim, for the first time, I think ever in his young PGA Tour career, is the betting favorite at 12-1. That is the best number that's widely available. You can find him some spots at 11. I think there were some lingering 14s and 16s that are gone by now. He is followed by Sunjae Im, Jordan Spieth, defending champion Hideki Matsuyama. Those are the 4 guys that are pretty much widely available under 20-1, given the trend of, as you've mentioned, recent chalk hitting. Do you have any interest in the top of the board?
Recent chalk has been hitting, and we've seen 8 of the last 9 winners played the week before, and these are clearly, 4 of the best, the 4 best players who played last week in this week's field. So we've got to give them a close look. The only thing negative I could say about Tom Kim is that there's 140 guys here.
Right.
Because, that's it. You're trying to figure, I don't have a bad word to say. If he putts even a fingernail positive, he probably wins.
Right.
I don't know that I'm not seeing myself making the 12-1 bet. I also don't have a case against this guy other than the sheer law of averages, probability, whatever you want to call it, and variables that involve 140 guys playing their own golf ball for 4 days.
Honestly,
I'm not in the back up the Brinks truck to make a golf bet part of the golf calendar yet. So I'll have to watch golf Tom Kim and smile. I don't have anything negative to say. If I made a move down here, though, probably would be Jordan Spieth. It looks like one of those shorter courses that this modern Spieth, I think, is where he's going to mostly excel at as we go forward. Played well last week. If I made a move under 20 for me, it would be Jordan Spieth. Using that OddsChecker grid, finding those 16-1 seem to be the consensus high water mark.
Yeah, Spieth did look pretty good last week at the Tournament of Champions. And you're right, this is a course that he's played sparingly. I don't believe he's played this tournament since 2019, but he does have a 3rd place finish here under his bag. You're right, he's 16-1 across the board using that OddsChecker golf grid. I'm probably with you. My first bet that I have made is in this little 22, 35, 40 range, the zone that I normally live at. We've got a lot of solid names in here, mainly guys with very strong course history, good fits at this course. I'm talking about Russell Henley, Brian Harman, Corey Connors, Tom Hoagie, Taylor Montgomery, Billy Horschel, Keegan Bradley, Adam Scott, Keith Mitchell, players of those nature. Are there any guys in this range, Geoff, before we dive a little bit deeper, that have your attention?
Yeah, so I'm circling around a few, Andy, and I've made a bet. My first bet came in this range, or I've made 2 bets already, and we can add to that card, no doubt. One of them, I'm in on Corey Connors. There's a 28-1 on points bet using that OddsChecker grid here. Corey Connors, he seems to have great putting success here as well. For me, Connors this week, I apologize, I'm distracted by a noise behind me.
I like Connors as well. It's for me, I haven't made a decision in this range yet, but for me, it's between Connors and Hoagie. Jeff, the first bet that I did make, and this is a great opportunity to use the golf crib because the number kind of varies with him a little bit, but I bet a 45-1 on Cameron Davis at PointsBet. There's some 40s out there, but I just think this is a great spot for Cameron Davis. One thing that we didn't mention is that they made a pretty sizable change to the course this year, Jeff. The rough is actually like an inch longer than it normally is, which I think is going to just place a greater emphasis on long and straight driving that, hasn't been as much of a factor at this tournament in years past. So my first guy is Cameron Davis. We've lost Jeff for a second, so I'll vamp a little bit on this.
I'm on Cam Davis. I'm sorry. We do this fun. We do this in real time. We had such a great start. Why go burn the start? Yeah, sorry. It's a little kids make a mess around my house, and someone wanted to do a little vacuuming, and who am I to tell someone they shouldn't be vacuuming? But we're trying to do some golf picks, so that's just behind the curtain here. I'm real sorry for jumping up and leaving, and also maybe being distracted in your final minute of talking. I love Cam Davis here. He doesn't fit the motto of having played last week. That is the only concern here.
Good point.
But this guy, in every sort of relative category to me, seems like a perfect fit. We've seen Australians come to Hawaii and be just fine here if conditions sort of go awry, but it does just seem like an ideal driver short iron fest for a player like Cam Smith. We like to bet golf. We like to have fun doing it. Betting outright golf, it's so hard to find like what the experts like to call plus EV bets. Right. I mean, when you make an outright golf bet, it is like buying a piece of jewelry, buying a car. It depreciates the second it rolls off the lot. That's why it's important we use OddsChecker and get the best number. And for me, that's the 45-1s on Cam Smith. I say all that to say I actually think this is somewhat fair. Somewhat fair.
I agree.
Which is a very good thing in outright golf betting. Somewhat fair. Cam Davis, 45-1. Lock it in. That's a selection for me, Andy. So I'm happy we're on the same page.
Any other guys you want to give mention to before we dive a little bit deeper? The only two other guys in this kind of range of 50-ish that I was looking at was actually Keith Mitchell and Siwoo Kim. I'm strongly considering Siwoo this week, but any other guys in this tier before we dive a little bit deeper? There's also some decent numbers out there on Emiliano Grillo. Andrew Putnam's been playing well. Anybody else in this 50th range before we talk about some long shots to cap us off?
Yeah, maybe just a little shorter than that. Anytime on short fields, smaller, weaker fields, I feel like Billy Horschel is disrespected in the odds. And I'm not a guy that runs to bet Billy. I can't even remember the last time I did. But going to the played last week narrative, 35-1 on that OddsChecker grid for Billy Horschel seems like a pretty strong number. And the only downside I can give to Billy in this spot, Andy, would be he doesn't win events this inferior. Like, he's not a major winner, but he just bags big trophies.
Memorial,
Wentworth, match play. You run through the Billy resume. It's not Sony Opens. It would be a coaster on his trophy case, honestly, to win this one. But I think in trying to identify fair numbers, Billy Horschel 35-1 was something that caught my eye, certainly.
Totally agree. That one stands out to me as a top 20 player in the world.
And Grillo, I want to see him heat up again, and I'll be right there. But I don't know if I have a little R&R for Emiliano. He's just going to come back with the form that he left with. But I'll be watching him very closely, I promise.
I'm going to throw out there are a couple guys as we move past 50, Jeff, that really have my attention. Alex Smalley, he's a Duke guy. He has finished the fall swing off with 3 top 12 finishes in a row. He's been playing some great golf lately. You can find him available as high as 60-1. I would really encourage checking out that golf grid for this tier because he's as low as 40 in some spots. I feel like Harris English is going to have a better season. I'm kind of like firmly on the comeback trail for Harris English. I'm a big Kurt Kitayama fan as well. I think 80-1 on Adam Svensson is a really strong number. As we get closer to triple digits, Geoff, is there anyone in this like 50 to 100 range that you want to shout out?
Yeah, so I have to make a decision if I just sort of bet another good player or add 2 or 3 players maybe in this tier to
Right.
supplement the 2 picks that I have made. Smalley certainly being one of them. I raise your Harris English with a Gary Woodland.
Oh, yeah.
Andy, he's just raving about his health, and it doesn't take much for me to be a sucker
Ninth
back
in
on.
Houston, hit the ball
Yeah,
beautifully. Yeah.
yeah, to be a sucker for that. I've been already given the hard sell on guys like Poston and Mackenzie Hughes. And when staring at that odds checker grid, there's a big discrepancies and a player I think will be quite popular this week. Will Gordon, as
Yeah.
low as 50, as high as 80-1 on this grid. When we get into these events, I am always going to bet on a Will Gordon and Alex Smalley
Right.
before I'm going to
Hayden
bet on a
Buckley, Nick Hardy. A lot of
yeah,
guys in this range that have a
those
lot of
guys.
upside.
Like I would rather bet the unknowns of their ceilings than say invest in a player I think I know at this point, like Webb Simpson. Not to pick on Webb, just throwing a name out, but there are so many young players getting their season started off. If I was deviating from that trend of guys who played last week, we just named the potpourri of players I'll have my eye on.
Yeah, once we get past 100, there are some names. It would be bucking the trend a little bit. It's, I love these guys in the triple digits, but they unfortunately have not been paying off in terms of outright wins. Is there anybody 100 plus maybe that you're eyeing for, not even necessarily an outright bet, but a top 20? For me, I was kind of looking at Ben Griffin a little bit. He very much wilted down the stretch in Bermuda, if you remember that fall swing event. But there's some names here: Ben Griffin, Davis Thompson, David Lipsky, all guys with, seemingly a lot of potential that can be found at pretty appetizing numbers.
Certainly, and you are the second person to bring up Ben Griffin to me today, so I'm going to be swimming around that one very closely and looking into it. Davis Thompson, you mentioned. Why bet Denny McCarthy at 50 when you could bet Grayson Sigg at 110?
Right.
That's sort of, your thing to go with a putting master. This event is fun in the sense that all player types can succeed. Everyone goes driver wedge, driver short iron, driver scoring club right into it here. We've seen, players like Mark Wilson win here, Andy. So it doesn't, any of these long shots kind of do feel like they have life. They should have life, and past years would have life. We're just now stuck in this era of only good players winning. Like
Right.
an era is a stretch because it's been a season and a week, but feels like I don't know if that's going to change. And we shouldn't react to last week because it's the Tournament of Champions. Only a good player would win there. But I'm really curious to see what's about to go down in Sony, an event that historically has given the back of the board plenty of life and lots to root for.
All right, Geoff, any closing thoughts before we get out of here for Sony Open week, my friend?
No, bolt up.
Bolt up, baby. All right, that will do it for us. You can find me on Twitter at ADPLAC Sports. You can find Geoff Fienberg on Twitter at GFienberg14. And of course, you can follow OddsChecker on Twitter at OddsCheckerUS. That will do it from us. And we will see you next week at the American Express.